Hey everyone, back with another video about the spoiler review of All the Light We Cannot See. So let's not waste any time. Let's get back into the details.
Yeah.
All right, so Knox, what did you think about the ending?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ending of All the Light We Cannot See, we have this dramatic build-up. Werner and Marie come together at the end. Spoiler alert. The ending we all didn't expect. But in all seriousness, Marie chucks the Sea of Flames into the ocean. And interestingly enough, those of you who have read the book have a little bit more insight as to what this means than what we knew coming into this movie who really didn't read the book.
Yeah.
And the significance of Marie chucking the Sea of Flames into the water is she destroys the curse of the Sea of Flames. It's done.
Right.
In the book, you get it's enchanted by a goddess. It's enchanted by a goddess, and when she throws the Sea of Flames into the water, the effects of it will no longer render havoc and chaos on anyone else's life ever again. And
okay.
so that's
that makes
her,
a lot more
yeah,
sense.
that's her way of
Okay.
basically releasing it. This war that's going on around her, World War II, has caused so much grief, so much pain, so much suffering. But then you also have the Sea of Flames in its own way wreaking so much havoc on her life. She could control what she could do with this little stone. She couldn't control what the outcome of the war was.
Right.
So this was her releasing that and basically getting rid of it.
Okay, I'm glad
But,
you said that
yeah.
because
That's pretty profound.
yeah, and it was really confusing because I was confused because her dad had said she had said earlier on in the show that she wanted to get rid of it, and then her dad was like, "Oh no, this is the pride of France. We can't get rid of this," and he basically was like giving his life for it. And then she just threw it into the ocean, and I was like, "Why did you do that?" Like they didn't really explain it in the movie.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
not.
So I think, anyways.
Yeah. What would you say, Sarah, about the ending?
I think I got the idea that like what Knox was saying, but at the same time what Rachel's saying makes a lot of sense why you would be like, okay, but wait. And I think my mind did kind of say, but wait a minute, like he was like, this is the most precious stone, this is a symbol of our country, almost like a symbol of their freedom, like we need to protect this because this is a symbol of our freedom. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I would agree. I would agree with that. I just I wish they would have went into it a little bit more and explained what the Sea of Flames actually is. What's the power behind it? I mean, because you had, both the protagonist and the antagonist. They were all kind of linked up with this stone.
Yes.
But they never went into explaining what the stone actually was. Yes, it had some power, but who was behind that power, and did it really cause the girl blindness? Was that really the curse of it? I guess what this really tells us is that we should read the book before actually watching the show.
Definitely.
Yeah, I will say that this movie definitely made me feel, like after I saw the movie, I felt like, okay,
I want to read the book.
I bet the book is right. It seemed to me that the movie was able to capture some of the book in it,
Yeah.
but it just needed to be fleshed out more. That's how I felt about it. I felt like for the ending, after all the flashbacks, like we talked about before, you feel like, okay, you're having all these flashbacks, like you're building up to something. So when is like the present action going to take place? And for me, I felt like the present, once they got to the present and the action took place, it was rushed, like nothing happened.
Well, there wasn't enough time left.
Right, it was
wasn't
like, it was
enough
the
time,
end
so
of the last episode.
You felt like there was really, I don't know, for me, I felt like there was no stakes because I knew what was going to happen. Because after all the flashbacks, after all the background of these characters and how they got to the point to where they are, even the professor, which we'll go into later, and him being revealed as well, by the time we get back to the present moment, you only have 30 minutes left of episode 4. So what's going to happen? Obviously we know that Werner's going to go and save Marie, and everything kind of
Yeah, and
But
it just
last
felt like,
from there.
okay, so the Nazis coming after her. We've known that the whole movie.
Yeah.
Then he gets to the point to come after her, and he becomes this weak guy, which kind of, to me, took out a lot of the intensity of it. I'm like, okay, so we've built up to this moment where now this guy is basically about to die, and now he's coming to save him. And it all just happened so quickly. Like, he came, she shot him, he was dead, and it was over. And I was like, okay, so is this what the movie was building up to? Now, that being said, I think like Knox has said before, the main build-up of it is really to see those two characters meet. But for me personally, I just felt like there wasn't enough payoff. Like, there wasn't enough of them together for me to feel like all of that journey was satisfied. I don't know.
I kind of agree and disagree.
Okay.
Because I feel like that's not, for me at least, when I watched the movie, I was pretty satisfied with the ending. Because I wasn't really watching it because I really wanted to see what was going to happen with them two and how they were going to get together. I think it was more for me an emotional journey of seeing how this one radio station could connect two people that are in totally different worlds, basically. I mean, he's a Nazi and she's on the other side of the war. Yeah. And so I knew that they were going to meet. That was kind of like the inevitable. You kind of knew that was going to happen from the beginning. But it was more of the story of showing their lives in the past that helped you as you're going on in the future to more and more piece together and understand the depth of both of these characters and where they're coming from and why they both were drawn to this radio station that was like giving hope and everything. And I think in the end, you just feel, for me, I just felt like kind of triumphant, I think, about it. Like, here they are. And I love the pure innocence of the two of them, too, when they're together. Like, just this pure kind of,
Yeah. Like, those scenes with them together at the end were, like, great moments. I was wishing there would be more of them because it was like it was nice to see them together. And I guess I was wanting to see more of their interactions. Instead of it just kind of end right there. Oh.
Yeah, I think that does say something good about the movie too, though, if you want to see more. If you do want to see more of the character, like, I think that the actors were very compelling in the way that they presented their characters that made you want to see more of it.
Yeah. All the light we cannot see in the movie is slightly different. Oh, I shouldn't say slightly. Very different than all the light we cannot see in the book. Yeah. All the light we cannot see in the movie is much more localized with Marie and Werner. And the series doesn't really do a great job of including it to be Etienne, including it to be the other characters surrounding the main characters in the show. Yeah. Whereas in the book, all the light we cannot see, the ending is totally different than the TV series. All the light we cannot see is the souls of Werner, who dies. He steps on a mine and dies, and Etienne lives till old age, but he eventually dies. And all the light we cannot see was just the love and the light of these souls that triumphed through that perilous time.
And I think that's why, for me, I think that, you saw, I think it was a really good drama, but it could have been a great drama. I think it had the potential to be great because I think the story itself is very compelling and very different from your just average World War II kind of movie. Like you kind of know what to expect in a World War II movie, but this had a different play on it, and different scenes, and you're seeing occupied France and this beautiful island, and like the setting and everything, and the music was beautiful like throughout, and it just seemed that because it was only 4 episodes, it was so rushed that by the end you're just like, I know there's more to this. And if it would have been 8 episodes or something of that measure where it could just kind of flesh out and breathe a little bit, like The Crown per se, where you have like 10 episodes and you had a little bit of background, and it's just kind of building up to these things, then we could have saw maybe, you know, a great show or Netflix original. But yeah, 4 episodes, but it was still good, still well done. All right, so
favorite moments.
Favorite moments.
What were your favorite moments?
My favorite moment, my favorite scene is with Werner and the other German soldier in the bar.
Oh yeah.
I thought that scene was amazing, and it brought in the intensity, and it felt so real that here's Werner, and he's basically kind of caught, you know, that he's listening to Marie on the other end, you know, talk about this stuff. Whereas, I mean, it's you know, it's punishable by death if he gets caught. And basically this other German soldier finds out, but then he finds out that he's been lying the entire time too, so they both are blackmailing each other. And it's almost like a showdown, you know, to the death, and they're going back and forth. And I just thought that the acting in that scene was fantastic. And, you know, props to Louis Armstrong is his name? Yeah, he was really, really good. And the other guy,
German actor.
I don't know who the other guy was, but it was
Louis Hoffman.
Louis Hoffman, right? But it was very well done. That was one of my favorite scenes in the movie for sure. So, how about you, Sarah? Favorite moments?
I was thinking of it.
Mark Ruffalo.
Knox, you have a favorite moment?
Making
No,
the
Knox.
model.
Making the model. Yeah.
Marie, here, walk through.
Smoking a cig. Man, this is going to take a while. Whew, I got to do this whole city, man. I need me a cig.
Oh man.
Marie, by the time I'm done, this war will be over. But
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like, I don't know. I thought that was a little unrealistic.
Me too.
Maybe just
I was
'cause
like,
I'm stupid
okay.
and I could never do that.
No, I mean, yeah.
That was crazy.
Let me design every balcony in the city so my daughter.
But the thing was, he didn't just create the buildings. Like, he created every detail of the buildings.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, the roofs were just perfectly made, and
Yeah.
the windows. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
They had to put
Okay.
like coffee shop right there on the bottom of this one.
I need to make sure every shingle on the roof
Yeah.
is there. My accent is better than Mark Ruffalo accent. Just kidding.
Yeah.
My favorite moment in the entire series, hands down, was when Werner realizes that Etienne was the professor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My favorite moment as
Best
well.
moment in the entire
Yeah.
series. While Marie definitely eclipsed the entire show in her emotion and her acting, I have to say, as a moment in this very abbreviated miniseries was Werner realizing that the professor was Etienne.
Yeah, that was
You have the professor, the locus of hope and light for so long, building up throughout this entire show, and you have the German boy in occupied Nazi territory, Nazi Germany, growing up from a child and receiving that hope from Etienne, finally realizing and coming to the realization that I am standing before the very man that basically saved me as a child, as an orphan, and gave me hope and light in my situation, dealing with the Nazi regime and all of the post-World War I Germany, the troubles and the hardships that were just completely obvious and don't even need any explanation here. But nonetheless, I have to say that was the highlight of the entire show, getting to see that unfold.
So my favorite moment pretty much goes right off of yours, but I would say it was my favorite moment was when. So at first, when he recognized the professor, he tries to tell the professor, "Oh, you're the professor," and Etienne's first response is like, "Wait a minute, remember we're in war here, and you're a German. Like that's the relationship between me and you. You're a German and I'm not." And I think what was cool was seeing him Etienne start to come to the point where he realized like, this is a person. You know, like he saw him not as a German, but as a person. He saw him as the young boy who listened to him and got hope from him. And there was a moment where, you know, he was trying to defend him against his fellow resistance fighters. And they're kind of like really confused about why are you trying to protect this German kid, you know, boy or whatever. But I just thought that was really cool because it was like he saw his soul. And I think that was an important part. To me, that was the most moving part because it showed, like, in wartime, we can kind of forget that our enemies are people, too. And yes, there's evil. Obviously, the Nazis are evil, but there are real people that are caught up in the midst of all that. And we can forget to realize and recognize, you know, not just enemies, but people. And I thought that was really powerful, how that it was like a soul connection between the two of them, even though one was a Nazi and one was a resistance fighter. Like, that was cool.
I feel like he suddenly saw this boy, this child,
Yeah.
and realized that this is the exact kind of person that when I was broadcasting on the radio, I was trying to reach.
Right.
How could I be like against
Against
this
him.
person?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just got goosebumps. One of my favorite parts in the movie, and actually one of my favorite just kind of storylines, was his relationship with his sister, Yuta? Is it Yuta or Juta? Juta? Yeah. And they had a really close relationship, and the girl who played her, she didn't have that many scenes, but she was a really, really compelling actress. And I loved at the end when she heard Claire de Lune on the radio. That was a really, really cool moment.
Yeah, she realized through that her brother was alive, which was powerful, for sure.
And just that song, I think, it kind of gives that emotion really well, like, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so cringe moments.
Yeah.
Any cringe moments? Do we have any cringe moments in the house?
I have a cringe moment.
Okay, go
first
ahead
with this one. There was only one moment when I was like, okay, this was a little bit cringy for me. It was when the professor decided to go out.
Yes.
After he had been in for a long time. And I loved the storyline where he didn't want to go out and he was struggling. Like, I loved that. I loved that storyline. But just the way it was delivered somehow when he was going out the first time, it just kind of felt really sudden. Like, all of a sudden he decided to go out. And I remember there was some line in that scene, I can't remember what it was exactly that he said, and I was like, okay, that's the cringiest line in this movie.
Yeah.
I think he said something like, this girl's made me kind of see the light, I'm going to go outside, or something like that. Or something like that. I don't know. I think probably the cringiest line was when Werner and Emery, like, kind of, when they first kind of meet.
Yes, like all the light you cannot see.
They start talking. They both finish their sentence. It's like, it's all the light we cannot see. And it was just like,
okay, just
really,
saying, they said all the light we cannot see too many times.
Yeah, we didn't know what the light was.
But what is the light exactly?
But make it more subtle. Like, okay, we get that's the title of it. You don't have to say it like 5 times in the show.
Yeah, but so I mean, like they both finished each other's sentence. All the light we cannot see, and they both said it. Like, right, well, that's kind of crazy.
It's kind of like those poetry moments in Pride and Prejudice where they're like,
yes,
oh yeah, finish a poetry line, and you're like,
oh, it's so romantic. Yeah.
Do you have cringy moment?
Yeah, so this kind of, I think it was Sarah, but I thought a lot. Like, okay, so the guy who plays Etienne House, Hugh Laurie.
Great actor.
Great actor. I love that actor. So I don't feel like it's his fault, but I feel like they gave him a lot of very cheesy dialogue.
I agree.
And trite dialogue, like cliche. He said a lot of like, it almost didn't feel like he was a real character. It felt like he was this kind of guy who was just saying like cliche stuff. And from what I've read, people who have read the book say that the book is not that way, and they kind of complain that the dialogue in the movie was much more trite. So maybe the book is a lot better, but I feel like in the movie, his character they kind of made it a little cringe. And like how he just went out, you know, all of a sudden he was this recluse trying to recover from PTSD. All of a sudden he's fine. He's, you know, riding his motorcycle, gun over his shoulder, you know. I don't know. It didn't feel realistic to me, and it felt like tonally off. his sudden reemergence into the world just seemed a little.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the Christian perspective and deeper themes that we found within this story. So, Sarah, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so one of the things I really was very curious about in watching the movie was wanting to know what were these broadcasts about? What was he saying? You get kind of little clips here and there. It seems like he's talking about science and
Reason.
education. Yeah. But yeah, because whatever he's saying, obviously, through the story, brought like so much hope and this connection. I mean, this boy's willing to sacrifice himself for this girl that he's never met because of this broadcast, shortwave 1310.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm sure reading the book you probably know more, but just what I gathered from the movie was that it was kind of more of a reason, scientific, and just kind of seeing beauty, but maybe not, from a Christian perspective. So it kind of sounds a little bit wishy-washy, I guess, and kind of vague because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, we were kind of talking about, there's kind of this idea that like science, we know he's talking about science, I guess, and so science is supposed to give hope, which science is great, but there is a kind of religion that's like, where people almost worship science. Like science is what will give us the answers and what will give us hope. And, ultimately, even science doesn't explain everything to us because it only explains the physical world around us. But we are spiritual beings, and we have a soul. Not only do we have a physical body, but we also have a soul, and science can't explain that. And I think that's where, for me, I'm like, well, there's a deeper hope to be found for your soul than just science. And, obviously we believe that hope is in Christ and it's in the Word of God. But it was definitely an interesting idea, that, you can find this hope and, from across boundaries,
I almost appreciated, in a way, the fact that you didn't know in the movie, because then you could fill in the blanks. So for me watching it, I did sort of think of stories, like allegories that I love, that kind of just encouraged me and gave me so much hope in my life, in the mundane of life, and just kind of, and then you meet someone who's also read that story, and you're like, whoa, instant connection,
Or sermons that you've heard, and someone else who heard that sermon, and there's like this connection you have with them. I know, like, we've been to different conferences and stuff where like the Spirit of God really moved in the preaching, and people who were at those conferences with us, there's just like this connection. Like we would just mention like an illustration from one of the sermons, and it would just be like, you can't explain it because it's of the Spirit, but that you experienced it, together, which is cool. And that's how you kind of felt that feeling in a way with them.
And that's the best kind of connection.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's outside of you. Yeah, I remember hearing this illustration of, it was talking about relationships, and this could apply to friendships, but also, to like, husband-wife relationships as well, but that the best way to describe a good relationship is not two people looking at each other, but two people enjoying looking at something else. Like two people looking at the sky and enjoying the stars versus two people looking at each other.
I think there is a C.S. Lewis quote.
Yeah, that might be.
Yeah.
I should probably look into that.
That's really good. That's really good.
Yeah, I would say probably the thing that I appreciated most about the show was these two people that were, one was blind and the other one was an orphan.
Right.
Right from the beginning, they are, you have obstacles that they have to overcome, and things just get worse and worse. I mean, obviously Werner, he's an orphan, and then all of a sudden they find out that he's a genius. He's a genius on the radio, and so the Nazis hear about him and they recruit him into the school. Those things he could not control. He just couldn't control it. In God's sovereignty and God's providence, that's where he ended up. And then he ends up in a school where they try to indoctrinate him with all of this Nazi propaganda and the way they view things. And so he latched on to that shortwave 1310 where he has some sort of light that's getting into him, some sort of hope he's hoping in, and obviously for Marie, she's born blind, and obviously that is a hindrance that we can only imagine to go through. You put yourself in those two people's shoes and how you would react if all of a sudden now World War II is happening upon you. And I guess what I mean by all that is that they never played the victim, or they never kind of made excuses, just to give up or to quit. I mean, it could have been easy, for Werner just to kind of fall in line with the Nazis and become this despicable person. And it could have been easy for Marie just to, basically kind of just shut out the entire world and not really do anything. But here you have like two people that are,
still trying to do everything they can
Yeah.
with their own limitations.
Doing a lot.
Yeah, and they,
Yeah.
and it kind of reminds you of the Christian journey or the Christian life. Like, there's certain circumstances that come into your life perhaps that are beyond your control, but that doesn't give us the excuse, just to give up or to turn away. Certain things are disappointing, but the hope for the Christian, is the eternal life. So we're always kind of looking, through trials, through difficulties, you have that hope, which is, Christ, and that kind of carries you through. And I think obviously they didn't talk about that in the movie, but it kind of reminds you of the Christian journey. Like, there are going to be obstacles, there's going to be trials that happen, and we're called to endure those trials. I thought that was the most charming thing about the movies. Like, you have these two people that kind of just overcome different things,
And
Persevere.
persevere throughout.
The fact that she's blind,
This may be a little bit of a stretch and maybe a little bit too mystical of a connection here, but the scriptures talk about how Christ sympathizes with our weaknesses, and Etienne had gone through the hells of war before, and he broadcasted his own version of hope because he had already gone through and experienced the hell that everyone was in.
Yeah.
And Christ sympathizes with our weaknesses and mediates on our behalf in heaven in a very not direct but similar fashion in how he sympathizes with our weaknesses, and Etienne definitely did.
Yeah.
Definitely did. Almost like a very loose Christological figure.
Yeah.
So I think that that connection where Christ sympathizes with our weaknesses, we see that in Etienne and how he is the center of hope, and how that ripple effect, that gospel effect, goes out and touches everyone around, and it becomes the center of all the light we cannot see.
And another thing, with kind of going back
That's
to what
great.
Grant was saying in connection to what you're saying, when he was talking about the two main characters, you could also say that about Etienne,
Yeah, sure.
because he was dealing with PTSD, and he could have done nothing, but he chose to broadcast and to also help the American soldiers out through that too.
Yeah.
So even though I think that's encouraging for people who maybe have a handicap in some way, or even a mental health handicap, where it's like, okay, maybe there are some things that other people can do that I can't do because of mental health issues, but that doesn't mean that you're not brave and you're not doing, what God has enabled you to do.
Right, for sure. Like, you can do, God, whatever situation you're in that situation because God wants you there. Of how wherever you are, even if you have a sickness or you have a handicap or whatever it is, there's always something you can do, and maybe it's even just people watching you suffer while still trusting in the Lord, because that does more than almost anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I thought it was cool that the whole thing, we've talked about this kind of already, but how, we're all made in the image of God, even no matter what race we are. Whether we're like he's German, she's French. They're on completely opposite political and national sides, and yet they found this connection because ultimately they're made in the image of God, and they enjoy, and because we're made in the image of God, we enjoy beauty and we enjoy light. Not perfectly, because we have, obviously we're marred by sin, but it's interesting, because they kind of show like that race aspect where he has to go before the doctors and they're testing him to see if he's really Aryan, and it's this whole idea that, well, if you're of a different race, you're inferior, or you're a different person, and just remembering that, not negating the fact that there's sin and that every culture has its own tendencies towards sin because we're all sinners, but also realizing too that we're all made in the image of God, and there's something that we can connect. We can always connect because we're made in the image of God, and in many ways
which Hitler
very
did not
similar.
believe.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Oh, favorite characters.
Favorite characters.
Favorite characters. Yeah. Well,
Favorite characters?
So really quickly, Knox, what was your favorite character?
18.
It's hard.
ATN.
Yeah, it's a very, very close tie, and I would have to say, in the very end, I liked Werner. Werner.
Yeah.
He had a lot of, he didn't have a lot going for him except his genius, and maybe that seems like a lot, but in the context of this whole grand scheme of things, he was an orphan, he was forced into serving the Nazi machine and subjugated under his will. But he becomes kind of this vessel that's like the muscle carrying the hope after the professor stops broadcasting, and he's the one who ends up saving Marie and carrying the rest of the story through. So if you don't have Werner listening to the professor, you don't have Werner going and serving in the Nazi military, you don't have Werner in what was the place called? Semelo. You don't have him there, then you really don't have a great conclusion to the whole story. So I think Werner is my favorite because he's absolutely necessary, and you wouldn't even think he is very absolutely necessary. Just a great character. Great character.
The main character, Marie, I would just say this. She had to be well acted for the movie to be good, and she nailed it.
I agree.
Absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that, just going off what you said, I thought it was, one of the things I thought was really good about the movie was you had someone who was blind, but they didn't, because the actress really is blind in real life, she came off as very natural. I feel like a lot of times when people are trying to pretend to be blind, they're always like, I'm blind, by the way, and like they kind of make it really forced and stuff. Yeah, but she came off as so natural, and it was just, she just did a beautiful job. She's a beautiful girl. But I'm going to have to agree with Knox. Werner was my favorite, and I think that's because everything that moved me the most was something to do with him. And the actor, even though I think that the girl who played Marie, Aria, was a good actress, and she was compelling. I felt like Lewis Hoffman, who played the German guy, was even more intense and deep in his acting, and very, very natural in his acting. And he brought the subtlety of emotion to the forefront. And so his recognizing the professor, the connection that he had with the radio, like he could say a lot without actually saying it. And so I would have to say that he was my favorite.
That's very true.
I would say that Marie's father is my favorite.
Ruffalo takes the gold.
Mark Ruffalo with his wonderful French accent, Marie. Oh, Marie. And
gotta love Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah,
though.
we love you.
Yeah,
we love you.
I would go with Marie. I think Marie is just you know, her character is kind of the heartbeat, the heart and soul of the show, and you know, she's just she's a very charming character because here she's blind, but she kind of instills strength in other people, you know, and she instills strength in ATN when you know he basically has given up, you know, about going outside. He's kind of like a recluse, staying in his house for who knows how many years, and now this girl comes and just has this effect on her. And it just kind of shows you, I don't know, just always, it reminds me of God's gift of humanity. And even though certain people have disabilities, you know, you think about abortion, you think about, you know, oh, this person, you know, your child's going to be blind, or your child's going to, you know, have some sort of learning disability. And that, you know, that's sometimes
like they're inferior,
you know, a way to, you know, maybe persuade them into abortion, and it just reminds you of God's gift of, you know, even someone that has a disability, how they can instill strength in other people. I don't know. It just, and she just did such a fantastic job with the role. You can see how, because she's really blind, she can really relate to this character. You know? And there's this innocence and there's this charm that she has that only a blind person can have. Like, she literally can't see.
And even the little girl too, that little girl actress, shout out to her because she did a great job too.
Yeah, she was really, she was great.
So that was cool, just seeing, you know, people playing blind characters who, you know, are actually blind. That was definitely one of the highlights of it.
I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she might be up for an award.
Yeah. Well,
that's it.
Yeah, so definitely think it's worth watching. Let us know what you thought, if you agree, disagree with our thoughts on it. We had differing thoughts here.
Let me know what you thought about Mark Ruffalo's French accent. Do you thought it was good? What would you rank it out of 10? I would probably rank it at a -3, but you let me know what you thought about it.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
See you guys next time.
On the Costanzo channel.
Until the next one.
Thank you for our guests for being part of the show, Knox and Sarah.
Thank you for having
us.
us.
We are honored to be on the Costanzo show.
Yeah.
All right.
Later, guys. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.